Speaker.
Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to take a call on the Sentencing Protection of Children from Criminal Offending Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to 80 minutes of fact on this bill, and I think the only thing I can do is add a little fiction. I did learn a couple of things tonight. I learnt from Peter Paroni that this bill, in fact, has been floating around this building for some 8 years. So it's little surprise, given the fact it's been around for some 8 years, that some of the things contained in it have been superseded by other pieces of legislation. It was picked up in the last Parliament by Asanati Lolly-Taylor, who was famous for some things in this Parliament, probably not this one, but nonetheless she had an entertaining 3 years in this place and is no longer with us, of course. Mr. Speaker, I've been put right off my stride. But Mr. Speaker, she did add this bill and drew, I guess, a little bit like backing a racehorse. She came lucky. She got a bill out of the ballot, which, of course, some of us and some of you have had bills in the ballot for some number of years, never been lucky enough to draw one. Asanati drew one within a few minutes of arriving in this Parliament, and this was the bill she drew. So, Mr. Speaker, the National Party, for that reason, aren't inspecting it. And of course, we've got a slight side...
Order. I'm sorry to interrupt the member in his entertaining contribution, but the noises across the House, the discussions are just getting a little bit out of hand. If we could keep it down, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's much more peaceful. And I was about to say, actually, that I'd not only listened to 80 minutes of speaking on this bill, but the previous one, I seriously thought I was in a morgue. And I think it was very disappointing to think that you could speak for hours and hours and hours on a bill and pretty much never change the tone of the speak. And I think that's the sad thing about this place, that probably we need a little set. Oh, there is the proponent of that bill over there. And she actually did quite a good job, I'd have to say, Mr. Speaker. Sitting in the chair's seat, I did notice her making some quite good contributions to that bill, slightly more gregarious than some of her helpers. But I want to go back to the bill for a moment, Mr. Speaker, and the reason it's not being supported, and it's been very well documented in here tonight, that in fact a lot of the legislation passed by this government in the last 5 or 6 years has really superseded the intent of this bill. And I think so judges already have the opportunity to consider the presence of children when sentencing, and I think that probably was the key for the Select Committee, which perused this bill. And that Select Committee, of course, had a number of people sitting in this House tonight. I think Chris Farfoy might have been on that Select Committee in the early stages of it. A very, very good member of that Select Committee too, Chris Farfoy. And of course, David Clendon from the Greens has been on the Law and Order Select Committee in the time I've been on it and makes a great contribution. But the Select Committee at that time was chaired by Jackie Dean. And she did give Asanati Lolly-Taylor a number of opportunities to appear before that committee and explain the reasons for the bill and explain how she wanted to progress it. Asanati didn't turn up. And of course that doesn't help your cause when you've got a member's bill before a Select Committee. So a bit harsh, yes, I realise that, but I didn't say she wasn't here. But perhaps there's a reason she's not here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to go on to what I think are the solutions to this, and it's a solution that the national government has soundly supported in its time in government in the House. And I think the real cure to the child abuse issues we have, to the crime issues we have, is a better education process. And I'm sure this government is advancing that at pace. And I think initially the education and the opportunity for our very youngest of children to go through the education system, even in remote towns like some of my community, Ratahi. In fact, the primary school had a team of their pupils in this House today, and it's nice to see such a large turnout in the House tonight. And so I think that exactly, Farfoy. And I think that the education process will certainly make a difference and make a real dent in people's, I guess, perception of crime. I want to talk about another thing that's going on in my electorate right now as we speak, Mr. Speaker, and that is the mongrel mob, through the Pretorius chapter of the mongrel mob, in fact in Auckland, are running a drug program in conjunction with the Salvation Army in a place called Kākahi. For those of you who haven't heard of Kākahi, it was at one stage the home of Peter McIntyre. It's in the King Country. And my grandmother taught at the Kākahi School in 1927 as a matter of interest, but it's also the home of Peter McIntyre. At 1927, and they're running what is turning out to be a very successful drug rehabilitation program. And whilst I guess that's not education in its purest form, it certainly will make a difference to the way that those mongrel mob members participate in crime, because once they're drug-free, I'm sure that will make a significant difference to their attitude and outlook on life. And drugs, of course, are a significant, they were the background to this bill being introduced to the House. They're also a significant cause of crime in this country. So that's something that's going on in my electorate right now, which I think is really interesting, a little intimidating for the community, but nonetheless I think it works very well. That's a very small community as well. So that works very well, Mr. Speaker. So the other thing I think is really apparent has been this government's achievements in law and order. And as I said earlier, I've been fortunate enough to be on the Law and Order Select Committee in the time I've been in this House. And in that time we've had very good corrections ministers, very good ministers of police, and very good ministers of justice. And that has followed through into programs that are rehabilitating prisoners at a greater rate than we ever have in this country before, with I think great success actually. And as Jonathan Young said in his very good speech earlier on, we are having great, it was an outstanding speech, we're having great success with drug programs, literacy and numeracy programs in our prisons, and we certainly are getting a whole lot more of those prisoners back into our community in a form that makes them enjoy their lives and doesn't end up with them going straight back to prison. I think it's a very successful program. And also we're keeping a lot more people in their communities as they serve their sentences. That makes a difference to their attitude to life. It gets them off drugs, it keeps them working in the community and keeps them busy. So a lot of the success this government's had in the short time it's been, or the 6 years it's been in government, has certainly occurred in the law and order programs that we've instigated, and as Jonathan Young says, a very short time and are likely to be extended. So, Mr. Speaker, I think on the whole we're doing pretty well with our education, our law and order program. And the other thing I want to talk about with respect to the education and the law and order programs, a lot of people, and I guess it almost started in my day, where we expected people to go through the schooling programs that with an academic bent on life, I guess. And I think that challenges people significantly, because a lot of us only ever want to work with our hands. And when you go to school and you're made to, sorry, I've never had to waste so much time in my life before as this, but I'm very good at it. I'm getting very good at it. And I'm starting to quite enjoy it. Anyway, the great thing about working with your hands is that you can do anything. And I think the real secret to our education program is, and I'd have to say when I started this, I said to my neighbour, what am I going to say for 10 minutes? He said, just pick up all the facts and spread them further. And so, Mr. Speaker, what I'm actually doing is spreading those facts further. But I just want to get back to the education thing, because if you think about using your hands, it is a great opportunity for the young people of today who don't have that academic bent to get on and do something they like doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that aside from the fact that this bill didn't fit the bill from a government perspective, and I'm pleased to see even the Greens supporting us on this, and it's one of the few things I think they have supported us on. I do feel a little for Asanati Lolly Taylor, who was lucky enough to draw a bill out of the ballot, get it into the House, and so I think that whilst the bill will never see the light of day, I think it's nonetheless been given plenty of airing. And, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I will hope that the bill comes to an end with this reading, and I'll sit down. Thank you.